Welcome, everyone, and happy Thursday. It is noon Eastern time right here in Ambler, Pennsylvania, also known as the booming metropolis right outside of Philadelphia. And Thursday, noon Eastern time, you know what that means. It is time for your favorite show on the internet, Talent Experience Live, the show that covers everything that you need to know in talent acquisition, recruiting, talent management, HR tech, HR as a whole, high volume hiring, and everything in between. I am your host, Devin Foster. And before we get into today's topic, Talent Experience Live is proudly brought to you by the good folks here at Phenom, whose purpose is to help 1 billion people find the right work. That's why we host this great show every week, why we have our other podcast with Cliff Sherkowitz every month called Unusual Attitudes, why we are at every single HR event under the sun, why we hosted I Am Phenom India last month, and why I Am Phenom Global, or our main I Am Phenom, is coming up in just a few short weeks in March, so you won't want to miss that. It is all working towards our purpose of helping 1 billion people find the right work, and the way that we do that is through our intelligent talent experience platform, which helps candidates find the right fit faster, employees evolve in their current roles and beyond, recruiters achieve next level productivity and efficiency, and managers, who could forget about them, they get to build better teams through data analytics and insights as a whole. So if any of that interests you, please wait till after the program because we have a great episode for you today. But then run, do not walk to phenom.com, register for I Am Phenom, check out all of our assets and everything in between because we got some good stuff up there, some hidden gems and some not so hidden gems. But now that the bills are paid, we have checked that box. We can continue on with the program. We can start the news now, as Ron Burgundy would say. Today we are chatting about winning the talent race, strategies for high volume hiring and excellence. And I am joined by a recurring, very special guest, Bill Venteicher, a senior director of product marketing here at Phenom, who has had his finger on the pulse of high volume hiring. He has spoken with titans of the industry and everyone in between. And he's one of my favorite people to talk to. So without any further hesitation, welcome to the program, Bill. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here. I'm so glad to be in Ambler and doing this live with you rather than doing it over a Zoom connection.
Yes, no, it is the best way to do it. And this is a hidden gem of a town, I would say. We have a movie theater. There are convenience stores, everything in between. So I know it's probably a little bit too fast paced for you from your Austin City, vibe as a whole. But we're happy to have you here, man. And it's an exciting topic today.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah, this is it's a really interesting time of year. I focus on different industries and everything that we do to try and show how we understand that the challenges that companies in all these different industries are facing are completely different.
Yes.
And the solutions to address those challenges need to be customized, right? So this time of year, retail is just catching their breath while they're trying to recover from the holiday season, and now they're in planning mode. How do we make sure that the things that went wrong during the holiday season don't happen again? And how do we prepare for these new influxes of seasonality that we've never had to deal before? We have seasonal workers. We have people that are transitioning into a permanent role, but we need to fix the way that we serve our customers and the way that we hire people. So it's interesting.
No, it is. And I know I use this analogy a lot, but I think it applies to many different things. It's like running a marathon. You mentioned catching your breath, right? You do all of this training and lead up to running a marathon. And then all you want to do afterwards is sit on the couch, maybe have some junk food, relax. But if you have plans to do that again, which all of these industries, especially retail, as you mentioned, they're going to do holiday season all over again next year. It is time to plan, prepare, and improve on inefficiencies that may have, caused a sluggish holiday season for you as your organization. And all of them are different, right? But you passed along actually an NRF article to me speaking about a couple titans in the retail industry, Levi's and Starbucks, and their push towards a far more consumer-friendly experience, right? And we've seen this over the years. Everyone's trying to be like Amazon. HR Tech has talked about it ad nauseum. But I want to ask you, what are some of the most critical aspects of the consumer experience that are slowly, melting into that candidate experience as well.
Yeah. So the National Retail Federation's big show just ended.
Mm-hmm.
And so everywhere you are online, people are talking about the amazing insight that was shared by the people that were there at the conference and the innovation that's happening across the retail space. Yeah. You have Starbucks, who could be almost 40,000 locations across the country. And from a consumer experience, they know that with all the combinations of ordering a drink at Starbucks, you could have a million different versions of a Starbucks drink. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to reinvent and digitize the way that they meet those expectations from their customers. Yeah. Levi's is another amazing example. They're like a 140-year-old company, mm-hmm. and they're going through a complete digital transformation where now they have retail stores. They've created this totally customized online experience with a tool it's called Backpocket, where you can design the types of clothing that matches your personal style and fit you the best way. And they're changing the way that they're interacting with their fans. There's a huge fan base out there for Levi's. Mm-hmm. So that digitization and that effort to change the way that they create experiences for their customers is exactly the same kind of modernization and digitization that we are so passionate about in HR. Mm-hmm. And if you're approaching retail investments and enhancing the way that you're serving your customers, that customer experience is delivered by people. Mm-hmm. So you have to also be thinking about how you can take your hiring processes and invest in making that the next generation of the way that you attract and hire the right people to deliver that experience that you're spending so much energy and passion on to try and improve for your customers.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? You mentioned the article that talked about both Starbucks and Levi's, and I'm going to paint a weird picture here for okay. you. But the other thing that everyone's talking about online right now is TikTok. And one thing that TikTok is filled with is people's crazy Starbucks orders, right? 17 pumps of latte or caramel, however they want it. And you think to yourself, how do you move? But neither here nor there. The next aspect of that is Levi's, right? And I think Levi's has a very famed customer base, the same way that Starbucks does. And it's super easy to buy jeans. You have the 501s, the 511s, all of this stuff. But trends change, right? Pumpkin spice lattes, the trends of when people consume them change over time. If you are wearing skinny jeans, a kid on the street will call you an old man, right? And that used to be the cool way to do things. I say all of that, and I promise to make sense of it. Our experience expectations change over time, mm-hmm. right? The ideal candidate experience 5 years ago is not what it was today. We have to predict what candidates are going to expect because that's what they're expecting when they go to Starbucks, right? Yeah. You log into the app, it's going to say, hey, you ordered this yesterday. People who bought this also bought this cake pop or whatever it may be. Applying that to when you buy jeans and say, hey, we saw you've been a huge fan of 501s. We now have this new version of 501s that people are buying as well. Are you interested in that? How can you apply some of those automations from the consumer side or customer side of the business to a candidate side, right? To be predictive and stay ahead.
The key in all of those things that you just laid out is personalization, right? I want my own personal brand. I want my personal drink. I want my personal pair of jeans that fit me best and make me look great. Mm-hmm. Personalization is the key to putting AI and automation into your hiring processes too. Just like people's expectations have shifted over time in the way that they interact with brands and consumer goods. Yep. Expectations for how a application process is supposed to work have completely evolved too. Yeah. Retail is one of those organizations that's getting hundreds and hundreds of applications for every open position that they have posted. Mm-hmm. But more than in any other industry, if the job seeker has an expectation when they apply to a job and those expectations aren't met, they can immediately go to the next company that they apply to and take that job instead.
Yeah.
The way that you are going to win this battle and attract the people that are the best fit, that know what it's like to deliver memorable customer experiences in retail and are going to stick with you for the long run, are by meeting these expectations. You can't make it feel like their application went into a black hole. You have to respond quickly. You have to be able to schedule an interview and follow up with them in the same way that they would expect not being left on red in a text message.
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
And if you meet those expectations without technology, you have to have hundreds of recruiters. And there's no way that you can expect a store manager to be able to meet those expectations trying to hire staff all on his own.
Yeah.
So the way that you can do this is by, at the same time as you're digitizing the experience for your customers and transforming the way that you set those experiences up, you have to do that for your job seekers too. Yeah. And it is completely changing the game for customers that I've spoken to and customers that we talk to every single day that have started to put this technology in place, because you now have a completely personalized experience for every single job seeker that comes to your career site or wants to work with you.
Yeah, and especially in these spaces where your candidates are oftentimes probably your customers as well, right? If you are a fan of XYZ jean company and you are left on red when you apply, or you get an interview and then never hear back, hell have no wrath as a scorned candidate, right? Like from this, they're like, nope, I'm done. I'm not going to shop here anymore. And I think that that is a challenge that will begin to be realized. As you mentioned, more and more of these, companies are seeing an influx of candidates expecting those consumer expectations throughout.
It's little touches that make a big difference. I mean, I saw a post that went viral the other day, and this was for a corporate job. I talk about frontline all the time, but this was for a corporate job at Chick-fil-A. And they applied for a position, and I'm not sure in the post whether or not they got the job, but the real big touch is immediately after the interview was over, a gift card for Chick-fil-A showed up in the mail with a postcard that said, "Thank you for spending time with us." And that little touch, like, not everybody has to do that, but that thoughtfulness and that touch is what makes you stand out as an employer. And with AI and automation, you have time to focus on those kinds of things, where before you were barely keeping your head above water because you have so many applications and that you have to go through and try and find the right match, right? So that's where there's a huge benefit here. And I'm kind of all over the place, but AI and automation is not just about speed. It's not just about personalized experiences. It's about changing the way that your managers and your recruiters spend their day. And if they can focus on building relationships, personalized touch, and finding the people that are going to match with your company for the long run, you're solving all kinds of problems. And they just don't have time for that in a lot of cases today.
And those little touches are going to make people want that job, right? I think there's something to be said there. Oftentimes we talk about, well, the candidates go to the highest bidder, who's paying the most, the best hours, right? If you're being treated that well before you ever sign on the dotted line or agree to, you're going to want to work. You're like, what's next, right? If this is how they're treating me before I even work here. That's awesome. I love that story. And you're absolutely right that it affects everyone within the business. Another thing that affects everyone in the business is I've been catching up. You've been posting some articles on LinkedIn, and you have mentioned high volume hiring being a core challenge in 2025. Are you connecting this based on some of the shifts that we just talked about with these consumer expectations, or are there other alternative factors coming into this being so challenging this year?
I don't think that the challenges have completely changed just overnight. I think that the challenges for companies that hire a high number of frontline and hourly workers are the sheer numbers and how overwhelming it is, right? You have in retail, in hospitality, in quick service, or fast casual restaurants, the skills that make that employee a really good member of your team are transferable. And if they're not happy with their job, with their pay, with their manager, they can go to the next place. And the way that you meet that challenge is by making sure that the people that you're hiring not only have the experience and the personality and the skill, but are a good match for the unique schedules, environments, and customers that your company is focused on. And you can do that with automated screening and assessments and things like that, that when you're dealing with sheer numbers of high volume hiring, you can't do that with a recruiter or a hiring manager. You have to rely on really powerful automation and AI that can interact with those people effectively and figure out if they're the right match.
Mhm.
And then you get it. Then you automatically schedule it and you get it to a manager to see if they're the right match and if they're going to be the right person to hire. So I think those two challenges are really important. When it comes to how consumers are changing their expectations, I think everything has to be mobile. Everything has to be in your pocket and has to be available when it's convenient for you.
Mm-hmm.
One of those things that's really interesting is that your doors don't have to be open in a retail environment to sell stuff, because now almost everybody has an online shopping experience, and their buyers, their consumers, can pull out their phone and buy their favorite product right there.
Mm-hmm.
Starbucks is a little tough, but for other stuff, right? That's the expectation. Now, if you still are relying on traditional hiring types of practices, somebody who wants to work with you can't fill out an application and walk in and say, "Hey, are you hiring?" at 1:00 in the morning or at 11:30 after the football game's over or whatever. But if you're using AI and automation and the tools like we've put together with the Phenom career sites and Phenom high volume hiring, now those job seekers can land on your site, learn about you, and apply to a job and schedule an interview, and all of your recruiters and store managers are home asleep. And it was convenient for that job seeker to apply for that job at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the way that people can shop 24 hours a day from anywhere. Now you can apply to a job 24 hours a day from anywhere. And it's changing the game. It's pretty awesome.
Well, is it as simple as that, right? Where these automations and the ability to really apply from anywhere at any point in time, is that all companies are lacking? Because I know the HVH reports recently came out, and only 32% of companies were viewed as advanced or transformational in high volume hiring. Right? Is it as simple as, hey, let's turn on some automations here so that we can get those friendly touches that may be too heavy a lift for the volume that we're getting in, and let's also allow everything to be mobile friendly? Or is it more? Right?
There's definitely a lot to it.
Yes.
I loved the research part of when I was writing the state of high volume hiring, because I got to put myself in the shoes of a job seeker and see what it was really like if I hit the career site of Circle K, or if I hit the career site of Walmart, or if I hit the career site of a hospital, and think to myself, if I was applying to this job, what is this experience really like? And the findings are interesting. I mean, only 32% of 101 companies that I audited met that truly advanced, level of transformational. And I think it's because HR systems and processes are complicated. Companies have been trying to solve this problem for a long time.
Yeah.
So they've invested in point solutions to solve one problem that don't really connect to the other tools that they've invested in. They have legacy systems. They have an old ATS system. They have stuff that they're trying to make work that they would love to replace. But who has the time to shut things down to transfer over to a brand new program or to a brand new platform? So there's little things that make the adoption of AI and automation truly transformational. Yeah. And I'd love for people to look at the report and provide feedback and say, there's things that you missed here, or there's things that we will never do. And that feedback's important. But I think you want to remove as many barriers as possible to the job seeker, especially in frontline and high volume roles. And one of the most interesting things was, okay, so how many of these companies can actually get a job seeker to apply for a job without creating a username and password? Fascinating idea, right? You have to create a username and password for everything these days. But that's one less thing that a job seeker has to worry about. If you can set that up so that they can apply to a job that has been personally matched to them, that's 10 minutes down the road instead of 30 minutes down the road, and they didn't even know that location existed before, and they can apply and schedule an interview and be completely ready to go in 5 minutes or less, that's a game changer. And that's where there's multiple pieces of the end-to-end process about how AI and automation is driving that personalization and interaction for a job seeker that takes you from basic adoption of AI and automation to advanced to transformational. And the report lays out some really clear guidance about where you're really at compared to your peers and how mature your adoption is, and gives recommendations on how you get to that next level. So it's pretty cool.
It's interesting because you mentioned transformational. As you talk about it, yes, it is the creme de la creme, but it doesn't really seem like too much, right? Like from a overall business perspective, it sounds like there are barricades from organizations getting there. And the first one you mentioned was point solutions. And another analogy, so bear with me, Bill, but it reminds me of, that kid in high school who had that like 1990s Honda Civic, right?
Okay.
And it was kind of, it could get him from A to
this
B.
you?
No.
Okay.
Nissan Sentra over here. But close. So my Nissan Sentra, I bought a brand new radio for it, like a CD player, because I wanted to listen to music. Now, did that solve my alternator problem when I couldn't start the car? Alternator here is your username and password, right? You don't want to log in to do that. And at times I was stuck at the place where I was stuck and had to call a tow truck to get there. With these point solutions, like a one-off mobile apply that isn't connected to your ATS or chatbot that isn't connected to XYZ, it's a stereo in your car. Yes, it's going to make you feel good. You're going to get to listen to the music that you want to and say that you have that. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting someone from point A to point B to cross the finish line to apply or give you enough information to follow up with, it's not going to do you any good. Why do you think that organizations are so hesitant about leveraging automations, right? Because we're here laying it out. It's plain and simple. We're giving you the script in the state of report, but organizations aren't doing it right now. Is there a reason that you've come across? Is it policy or practice or maybe budget? I'm not sure.
You've named some of them.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think every company is different. Just like every job seeker is different. Every role is different. Every company is different on how they adopt technology and what their risks are. I think there's, one thing that we hear that is getting better is this fear that AI and automation is going to take people's jobs away and is going to remove that personal touch. And the reality is that effective AI and automation that's integrated into your hiring process the right way is adding to that personal touch in all the ways that we talked about. So that's number one. I'd say number two, there's definitely a cost factor because, like I said, they've invested in all these tools already and they're trying to get value out of it. And realistically, in whether you're talking about cybersecurity or any kind of software stack, there's a constant cycle of which ones of these tools can I tolerate because they're meeting the needs and it's not painful enough for me to move. Which ones of these can have the biggest impact on my business if I innovate in them? Which ones of these tools that I use every single day is completely done and not meeting our needs? And can I, migrate away from this? And then which ones can I completely eliminate? And I don't need this anymore because we've modernized the way that we're hiring people. Around all of that is this platformization move too. So if there's a lot of individual tools and people are spending so much time switching from one tool to another that it's slowing down the process, even with all of this investment in technology, then it's time to start thinking about how one platform can use that data that's being generated by all these interactions and improve your entire process.
Mm-hmm.
So we hear that pretty often. And then I think, the last part is just the fear of change. And I think that there's tools and strategies that if you lay out the entire process for innovating and adopting AI and transformation, or AI and automation, and then put a plan in place to understand what the roadblocks are, understand who the players are in your organization that this is going to impact, and then get agreement and work together as a team. That planning is essential toward removing some of those concerns and being successful.
Yeah, now it makes sense to get everyone on the same page. I think the holistic platform is something that we talk about regularly, right? Because even if you are hiring in the retail space or in the hospitality or restaurant space, you also have regular kind of 9-to-5 workers as well, right? And you don't want their experience to be different than the others, because
I think you do have to have that experience be different at some point.
Yeah.
The sheer volume and the expectation of your frontline and hourly workers versus your corporate workers are very different. Hiring someone for your marketing team or hiring someone on your legal team or something like that's a lot different than hiring cashiers or customer service representatives or things like that. So that's the great thing about some of these tools and the way that we've advanced even the Phenom platform. Is that this isn't an all-in thing. You're not going to roll in AI and automation and remove, the screening and interviewing process for every single role at your company. You're only going to do this for where it makes sense.
Yes.
And you can do that in a modular way, and you can ramp up and down at the times where seasonality is important and things like that. So that's an important thing to remember. I didn't mean to.
No. And I think I misspoke there. I think of, going to a restaurant, right? Used to always pay in cash.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Now you can pay with your credit card, which I think most people do, or you can even tap with your phone, right? You have those 3 options for the 3 different types of clientele. It all connects to the one system, but the way that you get there and allow them to interact with it could be different from that perspective. Speaking of some of these industries, you have mentioned that in high volume hiring success, companies like retail and hospitality are traditionally performing better. Is that unique just because of their industry, because of their candidates, or is there anything to factor into that as people dive through the report a little bit more?
I think there's more, but the 5 industries that we focused on that are really meeting this challenge for high volume applications in a small number of roles that they need to fill all the time are retail, restaurants, travel, manufacturing, healthcare, and transportation. Drivers, people on the warehouse floor, people that are building the widgets and putting them together, nurses and home healthcare workers, clinical workers. There's a different flavor of challenges for every single one of these industries. But there's also different appetites for innovation and transformation that's happening. And I think that at least in the 101 companies that I audited for the report, it's clear that retail and hospitality companies, so hotels, quick service restaurants, retail stores, are seeing the fastest return on their investment. And that is allowing them to get past the initial, I'm putting my toe in the water, to, okay, let's automate more of this. Let's continue to figure out how we can improve the candidate experience, improve the experience for our managers, improve the experience for our recruiting teams and HR teams, and use this technology that's available to us. Other industries like healthcare, they're going through a huge transformation of digitization. There are very few healthcare organizations that still have physical medical records on the wall in the hospital, right? But they're dealing with highly, highly sensitive data. They're a little bit slower to adopt because they're concerned about security of putting AI and automation into their organization. So they're going to ask those hard questions about, is your solution tried and tested and secure when we start to put this into practice? And the largest healthcare organizations are definitely there. Like you have those early adopters, right? But there are so many healthcare organizations across the US that are in regional areas that can benefit from this kind of technology, but haven't been able to get there yet. So, they're not as mature overall as a group because they're focusing on recovering from all of the pressures of the pandemic and finishing their digital transformation of medical imaging and medical records and things like that. I think the next big places where we're going to see more and more innovation very quickly is in transportation and manufacturing. You think about how many people it takes to deliver on the promise that a transportation organization puts out there to move goods from one place to another, whether it's drivers, whether it's warehouse workers. They are going to see a huge benefit from changing the way that they use AI and automation, not only in the physical handling of all of those materials, but in the way that they find the right people to join their company to deliver on those promises and that experience. And manufacturing, there's so much innovation in connected devices and in automotive and in pharmaceuticals, and they are innovating and adopting AI and technology in how they develop those products. It's going to be the logical next step that they find AI and automation that they can trust when it comes to their hiring technology too.
Yeah, it makes sense that is the next to ramp up, right? And I think to tie it back to the beginning, the consumer expectations, right? Delivery in a day was not something that I ever thought of 10 years ago.
And now it's commonplace.
Yeah, no,
it's amazing.
Free delivery was a nice perk to have if you spend over $25. Sure. Now it's expected, whether you're ordering from Amazon, Target, Walmart, you expect it the next day. And if you don't, you're kind of upset about it. Anyway, and neither here nor there. The medical being a little bit slower also makes sense to me because I think their number one priority is the patient, right? Where in some of those smaller, healthcare networks and organizations, they're still focused on that. Whereas if you look at transportation, we've already taken care of the one-day shipping, right?
And I feel for healthcare organizations because there's probably nothing more important for us in our lives than to get good medical care when you're sick or when your parents are sick. And they are constantly understaffed and they need to find more great people as the population ages and as there's more need for in-home health care, clinical care, regional care, and just managing that experience from walking in the door towards getting a clean bill of health and walking back and going back home. That the last thing they need to be worried about is struggling with hiring people. There's a huge demand for finding people that can help solve their challenges and delivering efficient patient care. And that's where this kind of technology helps people find the right work, So
it brings in that new generation of talent that will oftentimes spearhead the advancements in technology.
Absolutely.
Right? I think of the Gen Z entering the workforce and how before even Gen Z, my daughter can navigate an iPad better than I could ever imagine, right? And she's 3 years old. Hopefully that's not a demerit on my parenting skills, but nonetheless, when you talk about the aging population in healthcare and these digital transformations, it's going to start with that next generation. Somebody's getting ready to retire. Bill, between you and I don't think they're doing anything going out of their way to make vast changes to something they've been doing for 50 years. Is there anything that surprised you as you did all of this research? Anything that stood out where you said, that doesn't seem right, or I can't believe this industry lacks in that area? Nothing, too crazy.
I was interested in how much opportunity there is from companies in all different industries to change the way that they talk about themselves as an employer. There were a lot of career sites and application processes that I went through where it's either really cookie cutter and I can't understand going through the application process what makes them unique and why I should work for them over someone else. And then there was other application processes that I went through that were like, there's broken links and things don't work. And I'm interacting with the forms and I can't continue. Or even for companies that have put technology in place that's not working the way that they want it to, they're interacting and the process just it just breaks.
Yeah.
Right. I was a little surprised at that. I mean, it's been a while since I applied to a frontline job. I mean, my first job was scooping ice cream at Baskin Robbins. And I applied to that job in person, just walked in the door and hand wrote out an application. So I was a little surprised at that. I think it's a huge opportunity. This technology changes the game on really making that decision-making process for a job seeker easier and clearer and more reliable. And that was very clear as a differentiator from one company that we audited to the next.
You know, that is interesting to hear that, you know, companies don't always have functioning for, you know, application processes for the lifeblood of their organization, like an ice cream scooping job or a gas station clerk or wherever it may be, right? All it takes is one bump in the road for a candidate for them to abandon ship. Because if it doesn't work the first time, they're going to go somewhere else and try and find a way to make it work. I want to talk to you a little bit about the future of high volume hiring, particularly with advancements in AI as well as predictive analytics. Do you think that this is going to have an impact in the future? Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but as AI continues to take over the conversation, not just in human resources, but in all industries as a whole, do you think that will impact, you know, hiring frontline workers in some way, shape, or form?
I absolutely do. I mean, in my mind, the very near future of high volume hiring is automated, predictive, and completely personalized. I want to have companies get to a point where they know who they need to hire before someone even applies. And by creating tools that remember who your job seekers are and customize the suggestions and the touches and the nurturing, because you know what location and what hours they're available for, that's how you know that the next time you open a position for this store in this location for a night shift, that you already have a whole bench full of people that maybe they're not happy in the job that they have. They didn't apply to you the last time, but they're right there. And they're a perfect match. And that predictive advantage is where these tools can really make an impact in the future. I think that the other really cool thing that is a benefit from having AI and automation integrated into your hiring process is the ability to understand your data better. And this is a little nerdy, and not everybody involved in the hiring process is going to care about these KPIs and metrics. But if you can understand how long it takes somebody that from the time they discover a job to scheduling an interview, and you can understand how much it costs you to advertise a job and actually get someone from, I just learned about you, to now I'm an employee. That's where you can start to make little tweaks that make big impacts. And those upfront investments and tracking of those KPIs ultimately helps improve some of the biggest problems in your industry, whether it's retention or skills or just availability. And that personalization, that data, and understanding where you should make those tweaks, I think is a really powerful future for these people in HR.
100%. I think looking at it from that perspective, where you can gather that data and say, hey, this is the person that we need. I'm going to go full tinfoil hat on you here for a second. I'm excited for the day when you have hired someone, right? The process has been automated to an extent, but then once you have your employees' address, right, you can outline directions for them to get to the place of work. You can still have some of those little touch points that you mentioned, like Chick-fil-A, that says, hey, you have an interview in 2 weeks. It's at 9 a.m. Typically, the 503 is backed up. You're going to want to take the 405 or whatever it may be. Shout out to the Californians on Saturday Night Live there. Yeah, but that sort of thing where it's so personalized to this individual, and it's like they care. They want me there.
It's crazy how our digital lives are changing so quickly. Like, if we're all going to have an AI agent in our pocket pretty soon, that will allow you to have a reminder that comes up on your phone that says, hey, your interview is tomorrow morning, based on the weather forecast, the traffic, and the appointment that your wife has to take your baby to the doctor. These are the things you need to prepare for tonight before you go to bed. Here's what time you have to leave tomorrow morning. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And those technologies and that AI agent revolution is going to be integrated into everything that you're doing. And that's what makes some of Phenom's tools so transformational, is because you can see that time saving and that level of interaction in a hiring process that I think is science fiction. You know, it was science fiction 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see what.
You shouldn't be afraid. You shouldn't have a tinfoil hat on.
Well,
it's going to be cool
because it's tough to even still imagine, right? At this point in time, things becoming that personalized, because I think whenever we go to experience state of the line technology right now, we think back to ourselves, I could have never imagined this. So this next step that we talk about that says, hey, you know, you have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. It's going to snow a little bit. Oh yeah. And the Eagles are playing at 3:00. You might want to stay away from I-95. That sounds bonkers, because it's predictive of what's going to happen in the future. And it's taking all of this data and information. But at the end of the day, it could help you find the next person. Bill, we've talked about a lot. I'm taking my tinfoil hat off now. I'm throwing it away.
Okay.
I'm going to cook a pizza with it later. I want to ask you, we've talked about a lot. Is there one key point that you want the audience at home to take away from this? And is there anything else that we may have missed today?
You know, I think the final thought from my perspective is the most successful companies are going to be the ones that treat hiring like a customer experience journey. They know to be successful and to beat the competition, they have to create a customer experience that's better than their competitors. If you treat your candidate experience the same way, you're going to hire better people, you're going to do it faster, and they're going to stick with you for the long run. And that's the promise of this kind of technology and this transformation. You need to create that scalable, personalized, top level experience at every single step.
Yeah. I love that. It's succinct, perfect. Download the State of HVH report, right? Where can you find it? What's the URL?
It's on phenom.com. You can go to phenom.com/high volume hiring and you can see it there. You can interact with our posts on LinkedIn. We're promoting it there as well. It's fully digital report. You can access it from anywhere. Check it out.
It's on your phone, right? That was the main point. You can get it on your phone. Bill, thank you so much. Anyone who enjoyed this episode, we're going to talk more about high volume hiring at I Am Phenom. Don't forget to register for that coming up in March, the 11th through the 13th. Got those dates locked in. I'm going to have my AI agent give me the best route as to get there and not be late. If you're still hanging on till the tail end, use promo code TXL. I got a ticket with your name on it. Bill, thank you so much for joining. Can't wait to have you on again.
Thanks.
In the near future. And we'll chat soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Have a good weekend, everybody.